All right, hi again. This time we are going to talk about the pre-writing sheet for the compare and contrast essay. So for the T-chart, hopefully number one for you guys is already completed. You have the two topics you're going to be talking about, whether it's video games like Minecraft or Roblox, if it's sports like baseball versus basketball, if it's books, characters, whatever those two topics that you feel expert on, that step should be completed, as well as the T-chart, which is in Google Classroom, where you list the qualities of each again. So, if you're comparing and contrasting sports, for football and basketball, both are team sports, both have uniforms, both have a ball as the primary method of play, etc., etc. So steps one and two should already be done, but let's go to step three here. What would be the best way to organize your ideas? It's asking you to circle one of the possibilities below, either by topic, where you introduce the fact that you are comparing or contrasting your two topics. You list your first topic, all the characteristics of that topic. The second topic, all the characteristics of that, and then maybe in the conclusion, bring up the differences in there. So in parts 2 and 3, you're discussing similarities possibly. And then the second option over here is by characteristic, where you have an introduction. You break down the three characteristics that you want to talk about. So going back to the football, basketball analogy, maybe characteristic one, both sports are team sports. Characteristic two, both have uniforms. Characteristic three, both require scoring of goals, and then you would dive into that with a conclusion as well. Now, if we take a look at the model writing down here, that second option is going to be what the author of this piece does. So they compare the characteristic of atmosphere, they compare the characteristic of the features of the park, and then the characteristic here, where they get into the contrasting piece, is frequency. So that's how the model writer sets up the piece with characteristics. So that might be something to consider as well if you want to use that to base your writing off of. So the model writing goes by characteristic, but you can go by topic as well, where you introduce what you're going to be comparing and contrasting, and within the steps 2 and 3 for topics 1 and 2, you kind of discuss how the characteristics are similar and different within these two topics, instead of breaking it down by specific feature there and then going into the conclusion. So hopefully that kind of explains step 3 of this process. So now it's asking you in step 4, below the T-chart, organize your ideas from your list into paragraphs using the organizational structure you chose. So it's just asking you here to create an outline. So if you're going to go by topic, what do you want your introduction to sound like? What first topic are you comparing, and how will you compare and contrast the characteristics there? What's the second topic, and how will you compare and contrast the characteristics there? And the conclusion. And then if you're going to compare and contrast by characteristic, below the T-chart, you're just organizing your ideas into paragraphs using the structure as opposed to this one. So once you decide which way you want to organize your ideas, then you brainstorm or kind of create an outline of how your paragraphs would go using that structure. You can, by all means, use the Jane Schaefer writing process that we've been following with our topic sentence, commentary, concrete details, concluding sentences, all of that. You can structure it using that process for your first, second, third, fourth, fifth paragraphs and all that. Let that be a guide to you as well. So that should be step 4. Again, hopefully I'm doing an okay job of explaining that to you. Step 5 here is what would make an engaging introduction? Can you create a scene with sensory details? Can you use a statistic? Can you ask an interesting or detailed question? Try some ideas below. Going back to our model writing here, the author opens with some sensory details. It gives us the roar of wheels and the slap of skateboards, familiar sounds. That word sounds lets us know that it is a sensory detail. You can use that as well in your own writing piece. It's definitely a writing technique that does engage the reader right away because we all use our 5 senses. You could use a statistic, some facts or data about your topic, or ask an interesting and detailed question. So maybe something beyond the did you know that? So when it's saying interesting or detailed question, make sure to dig a little deeper. Or nuanced question. We're good at asking questions. We've been doing that with our literature circle roles and in our writing for a while now. So for step 5, it's just asking you to try out some of those things. If you were gonna start with a sensory detail, how would you use that? Would you use your sense of sight or sound to dive right into it? Would you want to use some figurative language? If you're going to use a statistic, make sure that you are citing your source wherever you're getting that information from, according to blah.com, this and this and that, whatever your fact is or your statistic or your piece of data. Make sure that you are always citing your sources for that there so that the writer knows, or the reader, I'm sorry, knows that you're coming from a place of authority with what you're writing about. So step 5 is asking you to kind of think through that and try some ideas out below. And then step 6, think about your conclusion. Can you do anything else besides summarize? Can you give an opinion? Can you make it more of a persuasive piece? Almost kind of like an argument and debate where you're making that closing argument. If you had to choose one activity to do for the rest of your life, you should choose this one because it's stronger, and going back to those reasons there. Can you tell why your topic is important? Does it have some social or, environmental or drive behind it? Why should people be focused on the topic that you're talking about, and you're comparing or contrasting? Or do you take it just back to the introduction? If you started the story with some sensory details, do you close it that way? And then for step 6, it's asking you again to just try some of those ideas. So yeah, you can summarize it, but also they're just walking you through other ways that you could close your essay out as well. And it's asking you to try some on the back of this paper. You'd flip it over, but within your Google Classroom, there should be space. Your Google Classroom document, there should be space for you to work out those ideas as well. Hopefully this is helpful to you. We can walk through other pieces as we get to them. But yeah, that's all I've got for now. Happy writing, you guys. Take care, and I will see you on the next one.